All right. Well, welcome everyone to the first iteration of our this event, which we're titling "Religion and Resilience." And just want to let you know right off the bat, I'm so grateful to have Dr. Justin Dyer here on with me. He's here. There, we're going to have a discussion today. But let me just tell you. So this is a program that we're just starting up here at Coast Guard Training Center, Petaluma. And the impetus behind it is we want to look at how activity in various religious traditions, involvement in religion can help a person's inner strength, help develop and strengthen them, their resilience, especially in this day and age. I know we're all facing all sorts of stuff right now with shutdowns and trying to stay safe and healthy and all sort of different things of that nature. But I want to just say right off the bat, I'm grateful for the command here, the Coast Guard Command. I'm a Navy chaplain serving with the Coast Guard. Been here for about a year and a half at Training Center Petaluma, and have wonderful support in my command leadership, who actually this came about from a dialogue that I had with my commanding officer here, who we both thought it would be a wonderful idea to share these, to connect with local leaders and religious leaders and scholars like Dr. Dyer here, and to get this message out. I was in a conversation with him several months ago, and he was like, "Why don't you do a vodcast?" And I thought, what's a vodcast? I know what podcasts are, but here we are. So I'm very grateful for this chance. So the first one, I thought I want to get a scholar on here and a person who's very active in a religious tradition that happens to be my own religious tradition. My endorsing body as a chaplain, the body that endorses me, is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so I wanted to start out here with Dr. Dyer. Let me just give a brief introduction, and then I don't want to talk too much. We want to hear from you and maybe have a dialogue. So Dr. Dyer, he received his PhD in Human and Community Development from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, after which he was a postdoctoral fellow at Auburn University. Following this, he joined the faculty of the BYU School of Family, where he taught courses on family processes and statistical methodology. He became part of the religious education faculty in 2015. His research includes fatherhood, with a particular emphasis on fathers in stressful circumstances, such as fathers of children with disabilities and incarcerated fathers. He is also the principal investigator for the Family Foundations of Youth Development Project, a longitudinal study examining how family functioning influences youth development, with a particular interest in how their faith develops from early adolescence to early adulthood, and how faith and mental health, particularly suicidality, influence each other. And that last little bit is really what, so a couple months ago, and then I'll stop talking, I'll turn it over to Justin here. A couple months ago, I got a chance to hear from Dr. Dyer in a conference, in a training for our chaplains of our faith. And I was very impressed with your presentation. And I thought, wow, this is an angle that we need to hear and explore more, especially with our younger generation, about how religiosity can positively impact our wellness, our resilience. So, Justin, I'll turn it over to you just for a minute here to maybe say a few words, intro, or just what got you started on this topic of interest.
Sure, that's a great question. Boy, I'm really happy to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity. I got really interested in this topic. I've been religious most of my life, and so religion has always really interested me. And now I have children who are in their teenage years. I have 6 children, and they're starting to enter their teenage years. And of course, as a dad, you're always trying to figure out what's going on with this generation of young people, and how is it that we help them, and how does the religion kind of factor into all of that. Today, and of course, I'm also teach here at Brigham Young University, and I'm seeing this new generation of who my children are a part, and they're quite different from previous generations in some really good ways, but then they also struggle in some pretty unique ways. In general, and this is not surprising probably to anybody, but mental health problems have just kind of gone off the charts over the last about decade. You have rapidly increasing rates of suicide, depression, anxiety, all those things. It's for males and females, but particularly females have increased rapidly in that in mental health problems. And so as I got to thinking about what's going on with today's generation, the newest generation, and faith, I started to do some research in that area. I've been doing that for the last 6, 7 years, looking at what is the intersection of faith and mental health with this newest generation. Why is it that we're seeing such increases in mental health problems? There's probably a variety of reasons for that. One being um, something that we often indict in this social media. They're far more able to compare themselves. You and I, as teenagers, were comparing ourselves to others who are around us, and that was hard sometimes. And when we saw other people doing better than us, well, now our kids just have 10 times, if you will, more opportunities to make those kinds of comparisons, which can be tough, can be tough on them. Also, we've entered a phase over the last really kind of 20, 30 years where we avoid, as a society in general, not, certainly, certainly some people are, don't do this, but concerns for safety are preeminent. You got to keep yourself physically safe. You got to keep yourself emotionally safe. And any bad or any difficult thing is bad, right? And so there's a tendency to back off on anything that might be difficult, which then we don't quite learn resilience. We don't want to get sick, but often in getting sick, is particularly as youngsters, that builds our immunity. We don't
That's
want to
kind of
have
that
bad things.
thing of the American mind kind of concept.
Yeah, exactly. Jonathan Haidt wrote a great book, like an article called that "The Coddling of the American Mind," where just the attitude is that anything difficult is bad, and so we're kind of not building those resiliency muscles within us these days. So that's kind of how I got started, was just thinking about well, my own experience, and then the experience of my kids, the experience of my students, and I work with youth as part of my church, and so I'm kind of surrounded by this new generation. It's called Gen Z typically, and um, just trying to figure out what is it that they need in their lives.
Yeah, thanks. So this interesting you bring up that Gen Z, because that's I'm also kind of steeped in that with my own family as well. And what we're seeing more and more of those coming in the military right now, not just in the Coast Guard, but every branch that I've served with. I've served with Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy, and now Coast Guard. And over the years, I've been seeing this generation coming in and leadership trying to grapple with how do we instill resilience, or how do we
Mhm.
foster the resilience that they might already have, because plenty of them come with good amounts of resilience, but uh, you know the military services are coming at this from different angles. The mental health, I would say that the mental health programs in all branches of service are quite taxed right now because of the challenge of trying to figure out how to build resilience.
Mhm.
And I guess the particular interest that I have is, and maybe a question to your pose right here at the beginning, is for this generation, where do you see, what are their tendencies with regards to religiosity, and how do you recommend, or what benefits do you see of this generation, and anybody for that matter, in building religious strength or connecting with their religious origins?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So this, again, it's probably no surprise to anybody that religiosity in Western countries, including the United States, has been dropping off. People are going to church less, they're affiliating less. The fastest rising religious group, if you will, are those that are unaffiliated. So religions across the board are losing members. Now it's kind of interesting how the religions that are a little bit more demanding are actually keeping their members.
Hmm.
There's something there for uh, older, younger people, right? If a faith doesn't ask anything of you, well, Netflix can ask nothing of me. I mean, I might as well go, watch whatever show that I'm going to watch, and that's not going to ask anything. I mean, if I go to church and I'm not asked to do anything, there's nothing required of me. Um, uh, People aren't seeing a lot of as much benefit as that, and they seem to be dropping off. Religions, churches that are asking things of their members, asking them to participate. Now, that's a real challenge. It's easier not to ask anything of your members. But when you do, when you put them forward, some religions, they have their young people lead out in various capacities. They ask them to speak at various things. They ask them to participate in this or that volunteer work. Those are fantastic ways to help kids build resilience, and also, interesting enough, stay connected to their religion. Religion, of course, also provides um, typically a worldview that makes suffering have some meaning to it, right?
Hmm.
You're suffering, but there's some meaning because of the suffering, and there's some purpose behind the suffering. There's some development, and you have an infinitely powerful and loving being who's there to help you along with the suffering. Suffering that is nonsensical to a person is just doubly painful. I'm suffering, I'm having a hard time, and I don't know why. Um, and is there any hope? Religions typically provide a sense of hope. In the end, everything is going to be okay. You have within Christianity the sense of a savior who's right there by your side. Other religions also have this sense that you have these divine individuals that are there. They're going to support you, and you have somebody to look to for help, maybe when you don't see that anywhere else. When we're talking about suicide, one of the main predictors of suicide is hopelessness. This feeling that I'm in pain, I'm having difficulty, and it's just never going to end. And so I just need to end that myself, because there's nothing for me in the future. I just don't have any hope. Religions will often provide that sense of, you have all the hope in the universe because you have an infinitely loving, caring being that, hey, they're on your side. Another thing that religion really provides, and this goes back a little bit to getting them involved, religions provide a social network, right? People that are interested in you. You attend church or synagogue, or you're there with your group, and they see you and they say, how you doing? How are things going? And if they don't see you there, they might call you up and say, hey, we didn't see you there at this or that activity. How are things going? You just have these expanded social networks that allow you to draw upon individuals as resources when you're in trouble. Religions will often provide um, uh, help and support financially for individuals, or help them get connected with financial support when they're having difficulties. I'll share with you a study that I'm doing right now, and it's actually really quite interesting. We have a study that's done by the Utah Department of Health, and every other year they do this study. In 2021, they surveyed 71,000 Utah teenagers, so it's a large sample. And what they looked at is they looked at different stressors that may have happened because of COVID. Did you miss a meal because you didn't have enough money for food because of decreased um, decreased income during COVID? Did somebody in your home lose a job? Did you have to move because of it? Because, decrease in income. Did you experience more anxiety or depression because of, during COVID? Did you do poorly in school because you didn't have access to internet or other resources? Those who were religiously affiliated experienced significantly fewer of those stressors. So if you were affiliated with religion, you experienced far fewer of those kinds of things. So COVID did not have as big an impact on you if you were religious. And then in consequence of that, our research finds, in consequence of that, if you experienced those COVID stressors, you were more likely to be depressed or suicidal. And so religion had an effect on suicide, lowering suicidal thoughts and suicide attempts, because people experienced fewer COVID stressors. So religion, we found, just in general, on average, not for everybody, but on average, on the whole, religion is really good for mental health. Decreases depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, those kinds of things. Not that religious people don't experience those, of course they do, but it does seem to be that they are able to draw on some resources there. And so religious people, those who are affiliated with religion, were able to manage COVID much better because they had those religious supports, those religious connections. And so when we're talking about resilience, we're talking about the social networks that one has to draw upon. We're talking about the hope that religion often provides. And there's another one that has to do with the social connections, and that is a sense of belonging. I have somewhere that I belong. I have a home in my religious tradition. Maybe I don't feel like
that's got to be huge in this vacuum of kind of belonginglessness, in a sense, this individuality that we're seeing and exacerbated by COVID as well.
Oh, that is such an important point. One reason why people have thought that we're increasing so much in mental health problems is that we do have a decreased sense of belonging in our society. Individualism has some fantastic aspects to it, but when it doesn't include a really strong component of I'm an individual, but I also belong to a group, and I have responsibilities within that group, and people care for me in that group, and what we find is it's really a deep human need, deep human desire to belong. And so religion will often fill that. And for those during COVID who everything shut down, maybe they no longer belong to their sports team. They can't do that anymore. Maybe they don't, they're no longer really a part of their choir at school. They might still feel like, hey, I belong to my religion, and they're reaching out. And I know we did Zoom church for a long time, right? Where we're still in youth leaders, we're still trying to connect over Zoom. So there's an additional place for them to feel like they could belong. So again, we're talking about religions providing resilience, that sense of belonging, those social networks that you could draw on, that hope that can be provided. And going back to the earlier idea of, hey, kids can have something to do in religion. That stretches them, that scares them a little, that's hard, and that then helps build those resiliency muscles in them.
Yeah, my 11-year-old daughter was asked 2 weeks ago to give a talk, so to give a sermon in our service this Sunday, and she's been feeling some responsibility and some angst about that, and some determination as well to get into reading the scriptures, to get into prayer. And I know those are some of the kind of the mediators or the factors that you look at when you do this research, right? Is look at church attendance, prayer, and those sorts of things that you can measure that add to. I'm curious, could you speak more about that, like those specific elements? I know you talked about reaching out, having a network. Is there a way that that can measure, for example, prayer and from
Yeah. And and something that's done all the time. I mean, there's a fairly deep literature on what are the effects of prayer on an individual, and even on, they've done some work on couples. What happens when
yeah,
couples pray for each other, and they'll kind of do a experiment where, okay, you, for 2 weeks, take a moment and just sit in silence and meditate, for 5 minutes a day. And then the other group, you take 5 minutes and pray for your spouse, every day. And they find that those who are praying, it has really positive effects on their mental health and on their relationships. When you're praying for somebody, right? You're thinking about them. You're often in uh, a more humble, if you will, frame of mind as you're doing that. You're also probably expressing gratitude. That's something that comes out, is that prayer. When you're praying, you often express gratitude for this or that, and gratitude has enormous benefits for mental health. So prayer, we find, is really important, and let me extend it even further to say family prayer is really good for people. When you're praying as a family, right? You're hearing mom or dad thanking God for food. You're hearing them thank God for the children, and you're having this moment to bond as family members. So it's going to increase your sense of family, and it's going to also have those other really nice effects. Family, um, uh, some of the biggest predictors of um, uh, what's really healthy for people are family religious rituals. I'm engaging in this religious ritual, whether it's engaging with scripture, whether it's prayer, whether it's, and actually in particular, informal. So ritual, yes, but informal religious conversations within the home are almost the biggest predictor of a youth sticking with the faith. If you're not just saying, okay, we're religious at mealtime, and in the evening, and then at church. But no, religious conversations are just part of what we do day in and day out. And a problem comes up, and we refer to religion, and we refer to beliefs, and those kinds of things. So just very those simple elements of you often break it out into private religious practice, scripture, study scriptures, prayer, meditation, listening to religious music, listening to religious devotionals, those kinds of things. And then public religious practice, which is I'm engaging with other, other of my congregants in these religious rituals, and both of which seem to have really important, good impacts on mental health.
yeah. As you're sharing that, I'm thinking, so a couple things from our shared faith tradition, and that's kind of where I'm going with these video casts, is trying to interview different people of different faiths. From our shared tradition, what do you see as benefits of religiosity or religious engagement in this particular faith construct that can help our younger generation? But also, do you see in the literature any hints at how to get people back involved that maybe
Mm, yeah,
share that?
that's a really good question. I think with our faith, the example of your daughter is perfect. How many people will be there when she's speaking?
Oh, probably, I don't know, 100, 150 maybe.
So you have an 11-year-old, right? At age 11, she's going to be going to the pulpit and speaking to this group. That scares the pants off anybody. I mean, that's That's a scary thing to do, and yet she's going to survive, right? She'll get to the end of it.
She hopes she will.
Right? You're never quite sure, and you as a parent, you're just praying, please let this child
Yeah,
survive.
that's a reason to pray.
Yeah, right. So it's going to be a scary opportunity for her. And like you say, okay, well, where's my faith at? If I'm going to be declaring something, uh, it gets you thinking more about where you're at, and it does. It gets you into Scripture. It gets you learning about your faith. Nearly every single week in our congregation, probably like yours, you have a young person speak, and somebody between the age of a teenager speak, 11-year-old, preteens that are speaking in church, and we have also leadership roles for these young people. My daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, she, yeah, 14. I know the age of my kids usually.
Her
She
name.
was.
No,
What's that? Yeah. She was just asked to be the president of her class of young women, right? And so she has about 10 young women that she is now the president of. And she has 2 individuals who she selected to be her counselors as part of a presidency. And now they meet weekly as a presidency to talk over the girls, what's going on in their lives, what activities they should have. And you have adults that are mentoring them in that space. My daughter, right, that's a scary thing to do, but you realize, oh, I can do it. And being asked to do those things, even our young ones, right? My 5-year-old has given a talk in what we refer to as the primary. So for the little kids, so he's prepared a little talk, and mom whispers in his ear because he can't read his talk, but whispers in his ear what he said that he wanted to say that we wrote down. And these opportunities to and this sounds a little cold, but really, what an important thing: opportunities to be scared and to do scary things and to do difficult things. I think is really important. You mentioned you have a daughter who's, say, serving a mission for the church. She's been gone for about 15 months or so, away from home, living on her own, doing missionary work on her own. I mean, she has somebody there with her, but that's an experience that is something that really pushes individuals. And again, so your daughter's giving a talk. She'll be reading, and you'll be mentoring her through that probably. And you'll be talking about your faith, and you'll be helping her with the kind of concepts. You'll be mentoring her through ideas about God being love, and those aspects of learning about one's faith, and having those adult mentors that help them to draw the good out of their faith. Right? What are the good aspects here of the faith?
I think that's a great connection that you make with, when we look at building resilience in other facets like physical resilience or endurance. You can't expect to run a marathon unless you push yourself to get to that point. And I recall President Nelson, the leader of our particular faith, talking recently about how it takes work to build faith and to build, religious resilience. It's that this work that's needed is doing hard things. And I think, I don't know, do you see this in a tendency for people, maybe particularly in this generation, that are struggling with wanting to do hard things or wanting to, I guess, stay committed to hard things? And
yeah, certainly. It's it's much, again, if your kind of baseline assumption is that hard things are bad and that experience anxiety is bad, right? That we're able to diagnose and work with anxiety today is a wonder, and it's fantastic how we're able to do that. But I fear that some message that people are receiving is that, well, if I experience anxiety, that's wrong,
Hmm.
and I shouldn't be experiencing that anxiety, and so I'm going to avoid that anxiety.
Yeah.
That we need to treat anxiety, and sometimes I think we miss the distinction between, all right, we have some clinical levels of this, which, yeah, we don't want that. We don't want people to be disabled by it. But also this idea that, no, actually, some anxiety is a good thing, and it's healthy, and we learn that we can work with that, as part of our lives. And so, I see with a lot of I work a lot with the young people in my congregation, um, and um, I I see that hesitancy to engage in difficult things. Um, but at the same time, we're pushing them a little more out of their comfort zone to be able to do that. And we're kind of strategizing ways that, all right, what are some things that we can do that'll scare them just a little bit, right? That afterwards they can say, I did that, I accomplished
Yeah.
something, and they can feel good about
That's where
themselves.
the magic comes, is when they recognize that they did it, they made it through it.
Yeah,
And particularly a religious element to maybe theologically, I know within our faith construct of seeing life in general as a project, in a sense, as a process of going through hard things, but not alone. Sense that we realize that we're not alone, that there is a loving God, and in fact, who sent his son uh, to go through the human experience.
yeah. Well, and referring to Jesus there, right? We have the example of, not my will but thine be done, right? There's something that's hard that I'm going to experience, and it seems that, there may have been some, well, there was some dialogue there, at least, to say, okay, I'm going to go through this, and whatever it is that I want, I'm going to ignore that, or I'm going to put that on an altar and say it's going to be God's will. What is it that God wants from me? And I'm going to do that independent of difficulties that I might be feeling, that I might experience in that. That I'm going to move forward, one way or the other, past those difficulties. And yeah, I think in our faith we do talk about life as a trial, and that it's just part of the trial that we're experiencing, right? It's just, that's the part of the fall of Adam and Eve, that there's some difficulties that we're going to experience. But like you said, hey, there's somebody that's going to be helping us through that. Really helps to frame those difficulties. Again, referring to our faith, there's a instance where the founder of our faith, Joseph Smith Jr., was in prison and in terrible conditions, and in there for months through the winter. I mean, just awful. And then those who he was leading are experiencing awful difficulties as well. And in that moment of great strain and trial, he feels God tell him that all these things shall be for thy good. And if thou endure it well, God shall exalt thee on high, right? So, hey, it's going to be for your good, right? And these difficulties that you experience will eventually be something that benefits you and helps you to grow. And so it's going to be okay. I think that's a strong thread through, well, not just our tradition, many traditions, but that's just kind of one instance where you see that displayed.
Yeah, the life is so full of unknowables and uncontrollables and chaos that to just try to contain that is nearly impossible. And so to be able to have that theological construct that you can lean into and be a part of, in fact, play a role in this process of okay, I'm not walking alone through all of this. Thinking of that dark jail cell for what 8 months, just in there, and he even cried out, Where are you, God?"
Yeah,
Sounds
that
like a lot of Job, where are you, and that kind of thing. And uh, but then the resilience that comes through sticking with that, with God, sticking with
yeah.
those tenets of one's faith, and in particular this faith that we're talking about today. uh, you mentioned you had an interesting interview with Fresh Air a year ago or a couple of years ago, where you referred to religiosity as a buffer, or a way to be a buffer. And in particular, the question was about when it comes to shame, the relationship
Mhm.
of shame and religion, and how, is there a possibility that people could be shamed by, or guilted too much in religion to the point where it's adverse to their resilience. You mentioned it can actually be a buffer. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. When sometimes when I think of my faith and me engaging in it, you sense that oh, I should be doing more, or oh, I'm not, not doing things quite right, and you feel guilty, right?
Not.
For
Yeah.
Yeah, for those kinds of things, and sometimes you feel that weight. Now, that weight can actually be a good thing because it can spur you on to do better and to improve. And I think the message of many religions is that, and it's actually a hopeful message, is I'm not complete. And oh, good, that's a wonderful thing, right? I hope I get better than I am right now, right? That's a and so that push to do good, to be better. Well, it's a weight, and in some ways, it's the weights like you go to the gym and you lift weights because okay, it's helping me to become stronger. And as I become stronger, then I have new weights or more weights that I'm working with. However, that weight can become crushing, and it does so when we distinguish typically between shame and guilt. Guilt being the acknowledgement that we've done something wrong. That's an incredibly healthy thing, right? We need to recognize when we do wrong things. I mean, that's a really good thing when we recognize that. But if at the same time, if with that we then think to ourselves or feel I am wrong, or I am evil,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's part of my nature is I'm just an evil person. Oh, I did this or that, and so I'm just evil, and I'm more trouble than I'm worth, and I'm just a burden on other people, right? I'm just taking up space here, right? I'm not worth anything. I'm worthless.
Right.
That's when we say, okay, we've entered in the realm of shame, and that's bad. That's really bad for your mental health, and that's actually a major predictor of suicidal thoughts. Is that I'm just worthless, and people would be better if I weren't here. And so we need to avoid shame at all costs while still maintaining that good guilt that's going to help us. That's going to help us to progress. Now, you can experience shame within religion, and I'm sure people within the sound of my voice are saying, "Yep, I've experienced that. I've experienced shame within religion." At the same time, people within the sound of my voice, probably sound of our this video cast here, are probably saying, "Oh, I actually felt that when I was in elementary school. I felt that when I was part of this group or that group, or in my family, my mom or my dad or my brother or sister, they made me feel that, right? So shame is something that can be experienced no matter where you are. What religion can help in terms of buffering against shame is to say uh, that no matter what you've done, ultimately you're still of infinite worth,
Mm.
right? No matter what you've done. And sometimes I'll express this uh, is to some youth. I say, look, I'm sorry, but you can't do anything to decrease your infinite worth. You cannot. There's nothing you can do to decrease God's love for you and your worth in God's eyes. It's just impossible. You can't do anything. Now, we may have done wrong things, and hey, let's correct those. Let's fix those. But let's never go to the place where we're saying that you are worth less, right? Um, and we always want to be worthy to be with God. And we can kind of define that as a different construct from your inherent worth, which is infinite. And God will love you infinitely no matter what. God isn't thinking that you're a waste of time. Um, God isn't thinking that, um, well, you've gone too far. There's nothing I can do with you anymore, right? God can reach you no matter where you're at. And, you know, people who aren't religious can still feel that shame. But in religion, um, there, if we hold on to those ideas of infinite love for us, of our inherent worth, um, then we're going to be able to avoid some of that shame. Is because, oh well, okay, I've done wrong things, but hey, I'm still infinitely loved. So within religion, there tends to be these beliefs that help us to avoid shame. Not that it doesn't happen, and not that I'm not, I try and help people work that out of themselves, and I see it all the time. But it's so wonderful to have those religious beliefs that get right to the heart of shame
Mhm.
and are able to just go right through to it and say, no matter what, you don't need to feel worthless.
Yeah, that's beautiful because, and that's a that's got to be one of the most primary and most important resilience tools within the religion itself is that you are not a worthless, lonely mistake. There is a,
Yeah,
you have this construct, this progression, this potentiality for development, and I'm not finished with you. And I'm going to be there for you. You're not alone. And certainly that's a message that not just our young people, but everybody needs to
yeah,
hear is that I haven't left you comfortless. I won't leave you comfortless.
yes. And we have the concept that God is no respecter of persons. Now that kind of sounds weird to us, and that's the King James version language, but God doesn't love anybody else more than he loves you, right? You are you are as important to God as anybody else. I mean, he doesn't pay more attention to the Pope or a prophet or anybody else than you, and he is willing to help you as much as he was willing to help anybody in scripture or any religious person today. God is there for you, and you're at the very top uh, of God's mind. Nobody that he loves more than you.
Well, I wish we could keep going on. That might be a great place to stop for now. But I want to thank you, Justin, for being on this very first iteration of religion and resilience. I know I was built up. My resilience was strength, and I felt a little nervous going into this, so I think I actually survived it. But thank you so much for your insight, for your research that you're doing, and for your own personal witness of faith and the life that you're doing and those that you're influencing, to include your 6 kids and your family. And I wish you God's blessings. Thank you for joining us today. And I want to encourage, maybe, do you want to say one last word or anything, Justin, before we?
Oh, it's just been wonderful to be here, part of this conversation. There's so many things here and that we can do. And I think one thing you asked earlier, how do we help youth who maybe have left, or anybody that's left the faith, and say, maybe we come back. Sometimes, and hopefully this discussion, what we've been talking about, has shown people there's a lot of benefits to religion. There's a lot of benefits to religion. And how do we help people to see those? And what a amazing work you're doing. This is fantastic. All God's blessings to you as well.
Thank you so much. I want to encourage everyone too to join in 2 weeks. We'll have Reverend Brooke Scott from the local Two Rock Presbyterian Church. She's the interim pastor there, so she'll be on, and we'll discuss some of the similar concepts from that religious perspective. So, Justin, thank you, and God's blessings. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.